right, I believe that I am coming on live right now. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Very excited for this week. Gonna talk about my new campaign, Scion First Edition. Very exciting, but getting some things ready to go officially. Always like to give it a minute, mostly so that I can get logged on to
I believe that I am coming
as
on
well.
live right now.
All right, so we are here. All right, Scion, First Edition. Name of the campaign, The Heart of Orleans. A little fun of an intro this week, a little different. Rule number 1, believe everything, because this is how it works, son. Everything is true, nothing is permitted, and you don't even know what a masquerade is. Enter into the world unseen, somewhere over the rainbow it must be. You're on the road to everywhere without a tourist guide. I want to break free, but nobody has a mind to spare. Punching Zeus, punching Hercules, them some bad guys. So when the saints come marching in, get to walking along beside. So, Scion, created by White Wolf Games, 2007. Absolutely fantastic game. One of my favorites. Has, to my point, my favorite initiative system ever created. We'll talk about that in later weeks, obviously, as we're chatting about this campaign. But this is mostly campaign diaries. I want to talk mostly about the game that I'm running, the characters, the players, and everything else. To note, Scion did have a second edition. It came out in 2019. They are very different. Same idea. You are playing the children of the, ancient gods, Zeus, Hera, Odin, Heimdall, etc. But, really very, very, very different systems in approach, in history, in how they function, and everything to do with them. So we'll chat a little bit about the campaign, and specifically this week, our Session 0, so character creation, how all that went, some of my philosophies, as well as some of the changes that I've made from the original system. Like I said, it is 2007 game, so that's kind of the heart of high crunch games, meaning a lot of rules and a lot of kind of nonsense to go with those rules. So, who are our players? Who are our characters? First, Beth is playing Bishop Charles Jenkins, Legba's compassionate priest. This is we thought, the actual bishop of Orleans Parish in 2005 when this game is taking place. Ends up he was the Episcopal bishop, but neither here nor there. Beth believed that she was creating... and that's what's really important here. She thought she was creating, the actual Bishop of Orleans, and that's the way that she was playing it. Was, this guy is the Bishop of, of St. Charles Cathedral, and all of that jazz. Like I said, talk a little bit about the system. You are the children of the ancient gods. In this case, Legba being one of the Loa voodoo tradition, or of Orisha from the Yoruban tribe out in Africa. So Legba, we'll talk a little bit more in later weeks, and I'll probably expand on all of these gods and, their histories, their stories, and what really drove these players towards these particular characters. So we have Bishop Charles Jenkins, Legba's compassionate priest. We have Rob playing Orion Cardone, or Orion. I'm not quite sure. He's French, so I'm going to go with Orion because he's also very American. And he is Heimdall's son and driver and wrangler, also a streetcar driver. We have, of course, Arya, very good friend of mine, playing Painkiller Jane, Freya's hauler and brawler, and then Courtney playing John James Williams, Hermes, average artist, just an average Joe. So we'll get into more particular about these characters right here. Oh, I apologize. First, we're going to talk a little bit about this system. So, birthrights. Birthrights are kind of a functional part about this game. Again, we're playing the children of the ancient gods. Well, there's more to these old stories than just, Odysseus getting on a ship and heading off to sea. he went with gifts. If we think about Perseus, one of the oldest of the Greek heroes, he had things with him and he had people to help him. It wasn't just him and his power, and that was it. So the birthrights is a way for Scion to give you access to items, people, things from your divine parent. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit in this game about your different parents. I try to, as much as possible, say the divine parent and the mundane parent. Divine parent being your god, and then mundane parent being your not god. Oh, wonderful. Arya is actually in the chat watching this video. Holler and Brawler is a fantastic title. Thank you. I was really proud of that one. It just kind of fit. We'll chat a little bit more about Painkiller Jane in a second, but I want to get to birthrights because this is really key. When you're character creating in this system, it is a White Wolf game, so there's a lot of assigning dots to different things. There are 9 different attributes, 3 physical, 3 mental, 3 social, and those are obviously kind of your baseline of what this character is and how, strong or dexterous or hardy, how stamina, heavy they are. And there's one for, like I said, there's 3 physical, 3 mental, and 3 social. So there's equal importance across all 3 of those avenues. So White Wolf games, especially at this time, are all about dots. So you would put 2 dots in strength, for instance. 2 is pretty average. We'll talk about that more in later weeks when we talk about these characters and how they are exceptional and why they are more than just random people like it would be in just a base World of Darkness game. But White Wolf didn't just make World of Darkness, they also made Scion. So when you're creating characters in Scion, you do all of those dot making. You make your characters pretty standard. They've got abilities, they've got attributes, kind of mix things up between there. But then you get to birthrights, and this is the section that I think is really what sets Scion apart, because every birthright is meant to be custom made for the character. There are rules and there are, guidelines and things like that to follow. But at the end of the day, this is not meant to be, I am the Scion of Thor, so I get Mjolnir. You could also get, let's say, you could get Utgard Loki as a guide. Utgard Loki is a classic story of Thor and Loki being scheming people that they were. And, this is not just about your characters having power. It's also about them kind of being involved to a point in their respective mythos and in their respective pantheons. So birthrights are the way to do it. So what kind of birthrights are there? Well, there are relics. Relics are items. This is Mjolnir. This is Sleipnir. Sorry, apparently I'm going Norse here. But this would be, Zeus's lightning bolt, or, Baron Samedi's hat. Things like that. These are items purely, and they give you access to particular powers. They also can give you access to particular types of powers that your parent, your divine parent, may not necessarily have access to. So if you are, if you are Zeus's child, well, Zeus probably isn't going to have a lot of healing type things. Well, maybe you want some healing type abilities. A relic could be a way to get access to that. There are creatures. Creatures are any mythical beast, or at least fantastical beast. Not explicitly mythical. It doesn't have to be from a myth specifically, but creature could be everything from the Japanese kappa to Freya's cats to again, apparently I am just blanking on a lot of things today, to just anything that is it could be called a creature. If it's not a creature, then it's a follower. And followers are more humanoid, and they are groups. So you have 5 of the Myrmidons, you have 5 of the Einherjar, you have 5 zombies, things like that. Or voodoo practitioners. But followers and creatures are meant to be pretty combat heavy. They're usually pretty good in a fight, in a scrap, and they may have additional abilities on top of that. And then there are guides. Guides are a single thing. Thing could mean mortal, it could mean immortal, it could mean all kinds of different things. But guides, most importantly, you can ask a question of a guide, and they will generally answer you truthfully. The big thing for guides, in my opinion, is it offers your characters insight into the world, and it offers them the ability to if the player doesn't know enough about mythology or about these histories and things like this, a guide probably will. I tend to use guides as you may ask the game master a question, and I will answer truthfully, to the best of my ability, or to the best of that guide's ability. Obviously, guides do still have minds of their own. They are still thinking being creatures, and that means that they have perspectives. But those are your 4 birthrights. So just keep that in mind as we're talking about these characters. We're going to talk about these birthrights, and we'll chat about that in a second. So on to the first of these people, Bishop Charles Jenkins. So as I said, Beth wanted to make an actual Catholic bishop. Well, she didn't succeed because this man is actually an Episcopal bishop, but either way, that was the intention. So divine parent is Legba. Legba is a voodoo loa and is the best way that I would put it is the god of boundaries. As much as most of the loa cannot be bound to a particular domain in the same way that we think of other old-time religions, I would say that Legba is very much the god of boundaries and of liminal spaces. So the spaces between spaces. If we were to put something to protect our front door, that would likely be to Legba, because he's the one who's really going to look at that. And Bishop Charles Jenkins has 2 relics. That is St. Peter's Cross. St. Peter is one of the saints that Legba may have been attributed to when missionaries were working in Haiti and the other islands there in the Caribbean. So remember, most of these voodoo gods and goddesses, the Loa, came from Yoruba, from the Orisha, as they may have been called then. And when they came into the Caribbean, they met Christianity and they met Christian missionaries. And a big way for those missionaries to, bring the two together and to convert people to Christianity was to compare the Yoruban gods to saints or figures from the Bible. So Saint Peter, as in Peter the Apostle, was often attributed to Legba. So the cross can be held out, and when it is and done so forcefully, it inspires the fear of God. And we left this pretty open-ended on purpose in whoever Charles desires to do so too. So he could be facing down someone who's being very aggressive or just needs someone to get out of the way, present the cross and, give some sort of fire and brimstone speech, and it will inspire the fear of God in them, in a much more, not quite so, more of a biblical term is the way that I would put it. It also can turn to a dagger when needed. And again, that is in quotes for a reason. The character, Bishop Charles Jenkins, does not know this. The player, Beth, does. And I think that's going to be a very interesting, fun time when this has to happen for the first time, where this character has to get violent and has to use that cross as something that a cross would not necessarily be used for. She also has a creature, the Stormcrow. Does not have a name yet. We're getting there. But Stormcrow is a figure I honestly don't remember any real stories with it, but I have this image of a story, and it may actually be First Nation American. I may be wrong in this, but it really fit, and something just called out that it felt right. But she wanted, some sort of bird, because Legba is frequently seen to birds, according to Scion, and so this thought popped into my head. So Charles has this raven, or this crow, sorry, that will sit on his shoulders and mostly is not seen by other people, but it can also change into the Stormcrow. The Stormcrow being the storm itself. It brings the storm behind it. So it is the head of the black clouds. And like I said, I know there's a story here. I don't know what that story is, and I haven't had the time to do the research since this session 0 happened to find that story and to be able to really, dig deep and make the Stormcrow like it was in the myth. But yeah, that is Bishop Charles Jenkins. He has some interesting abilities. I think he's going to be a lot of fun, very compassionate, not playing him like his actual historical figure. The real Bishop Charles was, shall we say, a bit of a racist before Katrina, though afterwards apparently changed his ways quite heavily. But Beth is playing this character much more compassionate, much more, I want to bring people into the church because it is a place of positivity and it is a place of unity. And yeah, so very, very interesting. I'm intrigued, particularly because Beth is not a religious person, but she's really breaking out this compassionate man of God for this character. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think. We then have Orion Cardone, who's actually white, but I couldn't find an image of a white guy driving a streetcar, unfortunately. But yeah, so Orion is a streetcar driver. He is, in fact, the best damn streetcar driver in New Orleans. Frequently does the St. Charles streetcar, and his father is Heimdall. Heimdall being the one with the Gjallar horn that begins Ragnarok and that stands at the gates of Valhalla and Asgard and invites people in. So he is, in many ways also very liminal, very much the same type of person that you would call on to protect the door to your house. And is frequently depicted with golden teeth and with piercing eyes that see everything, and that he never sleeps. So Orion has picked up some pieces of that, namely that he sleeps very, very infrequently, and his two birthrights are his golden tooth. He just has one, as opposed to Heimdall. But that golden tooth has given him a supernatural whistle. And he can whistle in that way that you see in TV and movies where someone whistles and it immediately grabs the attention around him. And so he can whistle and people have to pay attention to him unless they are suitably legendary, meaning that they are, also Scions, also the children of gods, and have to be more legendary than he is. So they have to be more powerful of a Scion to be able to ignore this call to pay attention to Orion Cardone. He also has a set of followers, and that is Berserkers. Now, one of the things with followers is the followers have the ability, generally, not necessarily, you could make them worth less character creation points to not have this, but in general, the followers are able to appear when you need them to. And so that means usually you have some way to make them appear. And in the case of Orion, he inspires this berserker rage into the bodies of drunks. And As this game is taking place in New Orleans in 2005, there are plenty of drunks, and so at any given opportunity, he can also use his golden tooth, whistle, and the drunks around him are driven into this rage and become like berserkers. And they obviously have some battle stats and things like that. Very intriguing. Haven't gotten the chance to use that so far, but I'm really intrigued how that's going to go. And as you can see, insofar, our two characters are not terrifically physical of people. Bishop Charles is very social focused, and Orion is very perceptive and a little mental focused. So interesting combinations here. But now we come on to Painkiller Jane, the hauler and brawler. Painkiller Jane, her mother is Freya of the Norse pantheon, and Painkiller Jane is a long-haul trucker, a badass, strong woman who can beat the snot out of you in an arm wrestling competition and then get in her truck and drive off quick. And Painkiller Jane only has one birthright, and the player decided to sink basically all of their points into this one birthright, and that is Skirnir, which translates to ever shining, and is a long haul truck. And so that truck never breaks down. It is insanely fast. It can fly, and it can turn into Heigl and Treigl. I think that would be how that would be pronounced. I may be wrong. There's also always questions with any of the Norse things because, you could be going from Swedish translation or an Icelandic translation or Danish translation, and all of those are very, very different languages. As much as they are similar, they are different. So, but yeah, anywho. So, full points. So this is, Painkiller Jane's long-haul truck, and it's just the front. It's got the sleep compartment, all the traditional truck things, but it is also, I wrote down in the description of it, it can go 0 to 60 in, I think, like 3.4 seconds, which is faster than any non-electric vehicle normal truck can go, much less an 18-wheeler. So this is a hell of a truck. It can go ridiculously fast, and with a point of legend, which is one of the kind of currencies in this game, it can be made to fly for short periods. Short periods meaning, hours, but still. And it also, along with being a relic, is also a creature, and that is Heigl and Treigl. And this Jane can call the cats off of the truck. They are actually the badass looking spray on the side of the truck is them using Yggdrasil as a scratching post. And she can call those cats off and to stand there and fight as a creature. But yeah, really, really great character. This is the first very physical character among the group. I'm intrigued to see how it's going to go because obviously the rest of the party so far and in general really is not very physical oriented. So I'll be intrigued to see how this is gonna end up. Finally, we have John James Williams. Courtney looked for the most ordinary American name that she could find because John James Williams is just an average Joe, except for being the son of Hermes. Now, interestingly, I don't know how much this character is really much of an average Joe because he makes floats for a living, traveling across the country. Right now is obviously in New Orleans, getting ready for next year's Mardi Gras. But, this character looks like just the average white dude. So much that he can just blend right into a crowd with no problems whatsoever. And John James Williams actually has 3 different birthrights, all relics. Stock photo core. Yes. Literally, I looked for the word average Joe, and that was the image that showed up. So there you go. That's John Williams now. So yeah, John has 3 relics, has a glue gun, but it can be used to fix anything. You could apply it to the shattered side of a ship, and you could fix the hole in the ship with that glue gun. Also has a set of Mardi Gras beads that can be used to either blend into crowds or to call crowds to you. So either way, just kind of disguising as such an ordinary person. And then a suitcase that guarantees that John Williams always gets to wherever they're going as fast as possible. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get from New York to San Francisco in 2 hours, but if you're, going to the airport, you're going to hit every light, you're going to breeze through security, you're going to get right onto that plane, and that plane's going to hit all of the headwind on the way. So John Williams gets where he is going when he wants to and when he needs to. Very interesting character. We're kind of still feeling it out. It's very unusual, is what I would say, for Scion to have 4 characters who are all kind of, as much as they are not ordinary. Jane very much is exceptional. Very few people at her age, because she's in early 20s, would own their own truck. Those trucks are expensive. Very few women are long-haul truckers. Orion Cardone is also relatively young, like late 30s, to be a streetcar driver on the most popular, route. That is huge. That is rare. That is a hard position to get into. Bishop Charles Jenkins is the actual bishop, but is still not, they're not a CEO. They're not an exceptional artist. And then John Williams is literally meant to be an average Joe. So this is unusual for a game of Scion, is the way that I would put it. I usually pitch to my players that Scions are exceptional. They are, almost facsimiles of the most successful human beings, however you decide to define success. But I think it's going to work out because they're all kind of exceptional in their own little ways. And the thing is going to be figuring out what those ways are. So let's talk about my last little bit in character creation. I talked about this in my previous campaign diary when I was talking about the plot of Conquerors. I believe very firmly in during your session 0, when you're creating characters and introducing your players to the system that you're running, that you do something to grow those characters together, and that's not something as simple as just saying, here you are, you're a team, move on. It can be. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think there's something very, very successful and very, very positive about doing just some sort of exercise to bring your characters together and to make them feel more cohesive. So I had each of them look to the left and then tell me a significant experience that they had with the character to the left of them. So Orion looked over and saw Bishop Charles. Bishop Charles saw Jane. Jane saw John, and John saw Orion. And then without input from the other person, now I will say I normally do things like this requiring that there's input from the other person, but I thought in this group I knew the players pretty well, and I knew that they wouldn't go completely hog wild. They had already had the characters introduced to each other, talked a little about who they are, what they do, and, some basic questions like, why are you in New Orleans, in July in 2005? And so, I said, look to the left, tell me a significant experience. So, Orion had Bishop Charles on his streetcar pretty frequently, and they actually had a beer together once because it was just they just happened into the same bar at the same time after a long, hard day for both of them. Charles stopped a fight that Jane was in the French Quarter and allowed Jane to escape with her life. She probably wouldn't be alive right now if not for that. I don't remember what Jane and John were in a mud wrestling competition together. And this is probably the one that got the closest to kind of breaking who John is, but it actually worked out really well because it kind of built up John Williams' character and made him something a little bit more unusual and interesting and different than we were necessarily expecting. But yeah, so Jane and John were in a mud wrestling competition together, and Jane lost to John, which was crazy. She could not believe that, and she'll always remember the person that beat her that just looked like such an average Joe. And John is frequently on Orion's streetcar, and actually had met him a number of times before. So, they all have these significant experiences, these little things that bind them together. Not a lot, but just a little bit. Just enough for them to remember. And then I said, okay, now look to your right. Tell me something you like about that character. And you is not the player, you is the character. So now Orion has to say what he likes about John. And John has to say what he likes about Jane. Jane has to say what she likes about Charles. And Charles has to say what he likes about Orion. And then the opposite. Look to your left. One more time. Tell me something you do not like about them. And I think if you're going to do the like, you have to do the not like. It is so key to have not just the positive, oh, this person's so great, they're the best. The not like does not have to be, they're a terrible person and I hate them. It can be as simple as, when... he brings up politics a little bit too often. Bam. There you go. Something you don't like about him. Now there's depth to your relationship even before you've really met. Maybe you have this significant experience, but you haven't necessarily spent a lot of time together at the beginning of this campaign. Now, you at least have something that you're going to be able to hold on to and say, okay, this is something I don't like about them. And this is something I do like about that other person. And that's going to inform your interactions, especially at the beginning of the campaign. And beginnings of campaigns can already be awkward enough. Now we've kind of got some of that headway going where we know a little bit about the other character. So, a little thing to touch on here, kind of at the end of this week. That was session 0. We created our characters. We did a little bit of team building and character building, and that was about it. After this, there was a little bit of introduction to the setting and to the campaign because we had some time left, but I want to talk here about how I've changed Scion First Edition. Because it's a very strange game from 2007, and that is not what most players are used to or want out of tabletop role-playing games today. So I took some things from 2nd edition of Scion, I took some things from other games, and mixed them into the Scion formula, and have made this amalgamation that I think still really feels like Scion, feels cinematic, feels epic, feels mythic. I think that's probably actually the most important word there is mythic, but still, again, feels, acceptable to modern audiences. So, I have changed dice rolling and successes. In the original game, everything is rolled using 10-sided dice. If I asked you to roll wits plus awareness, which is how you join into combat, you would see, okay, I have 3 dots in wits, 2 dots in awareness, and you would roll 5 dice. And then you are looking for 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s on a 10-sided die. And then counting up, each of those 7, 8, 9, or 10 is a success. That, to me, is absolutely goddamn insane. That is a 40% chance of getting a success. So that means 3 dice, you are statistically incredibly likely to get a success. There's very rare times any character in Scion will not be rolling 3 dice. So that means that anything that is not contested or incredibly difficult, requiring more than 1 success, is almost guaranteed to happen. And I think that's just not great. So I changed it up. I made it 8, 9, and 10, which is the more standard World of Darkness formula. Gives you a 30% chance of rolling success. That means on 3 dice, you've got a pretty good chance of getting a success. But it's really, even that, just adding on that 7 really changes things. In the original game, 10s are also 2 successes. I changed that. It's just 8, 9, 10. Each one's 1 success. Move along. But here's the thing. This is really the thing that I think I changed the most, and that makes it a little bit more modern, is 1 success completes the task. You did not fail. End of story. Done. It could, however, be a yes, but scenario. Yes, you managed to lift the car off of the woman underneath it, but you tore your back doing so. It hurt. You take some damage. Maybe just 1 point. Nothing crazy. Yes, you manage to run across the street and dive underneath that 18-wheeler chasing the car that you're chasing and not losing momentum. But you didn't account for something else. Not the point, So if you get 1, 2, or 3 successes, I get to say what happens. And that means I get to add a little bit of a yes, but. If you roll 4 or 5 successes, we collaboratively say what happens on a particular roll. But if you get 6 or more successes, you get to tell me what happens. And that means you get to go as epic as possible. What this does, in my opinion, is it means that we are rolling when there is the chance of something being truly epic, and when there is the chance that they could not just fail, but have a yes, but scenario. That is huge to me, especially today, to have that option. In the original game, if you got 1 success, you won. You did the thing. Describe what it is and move along. And that's fine. But like I said, because of how many dice you roll in this game, most of the time, you're just going to succeed. I also added in something for willpower. Willpower is another one of those currencies along with legend. In a game like Dungeons and Dragons, you have hit points and hit dice and spell slots. Those are your currencies. In this game, you have willpower and legend. And I actually added in something from the Firefly role-playing game, which is being able to use willpower to add details to a scene. So let's say you are in a bar and, chatting with somebody and you need a distraction. You think, okay, distraction. What could it be? Oh, is a server walking by me? Now, in most games, I would say, give me a luck roll. Whatever I decide luck rolls to be. In this system, by using this willpower adding details idea, I can say, well, spend some willpower, and that happens. And the thing for this that I think is really important is that it does not have to be one character spending willpower to do that. The party together can spend willpower to add those details to a scene. So this makes it A, very collaborative, but B, also allows this to happen more often. So when they need something particular that I did not describe earlier, they can say, bam, here's some willpower, that happens. Cool, perfect. What's your idea? What are you trying to do? And we move along. I also kind of changed combat a little bit. Not a lot. Like I said, this has my favorite initiative system of all time that we'll talk about in later sessions once we get to some combat. But the combat is very crunchy. It kind of insists that you're playing on a grid, which I'm okay with. I like tactical combat, but I didn't think that this group was the right group for super tactical combat. So I actually changed it to resemble more. It's kind of a it's a fusion between 2nd edition Scion, which is really meant to be very theater of the mind, as well as a system from Dungeon Crawl Classics, which is that combat is separated into sections. So let's say you're fighting in the front room of a classic manor. There is the entryway, obviously the door. There is the main foyer there. There are downstairs doors to two different rooms, small rooms. There is the stairs, and then there is the second floor walkway. Each of those has differences, as many people as you need in a combat could fit in that main foyer. Only one could fit in the entrance. The stairs naturally provide, a height advantage to those you're fighting, or can provide height disadvantage to those you are fighting. And so, now rather than having to draw out that whole map and have them move around on it, we can just have those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections, and each one of them has a couple things that are unique about them, and bam, there you go. So when you move, you just move between sections, but still using this initiative system, like I said, that we'll talk about later, which is very dynamic, very fast, and very much allows for time to progress in a kind of realistic sense. I hate that word most of the time, but I really think it fits here. So I also changed up damage and some of the damage effects in original Scion First Edition. Damage was very deadly. It's a relatively deadly system, but it also was very focused around just dealing damage with your attacks. And I don't think that feels very mythic. I think, mythicness could be knocking someone back, dealing bleeding or poison, or knocking someone down. All of these effects that add on to damage. And this is actually from the second edition of Scion. In Scion second edition, your attack could only ever deal 2 damage, and that was only if you got a critical hit. If you didn't get a critical hit, you only dealt 1 damage, and it's possible your attack could deal 0 damage, because it was all about the effects of that attack instead. So let's say you got 3 successes to apply to damage. Well, 1 of that would go to damage, and the other 2 would have to go to something else. Knockback, knockdown, bleeding, impairment of some kind, whatever. And I really think A, that's cool as hell, and B, it makes everything feel very mythic. It makes combat feel like more than just exchanging blows. I deal 2 damage, you deal 3 damage, I die, oh no! There's stuff going on. Every attack is something more and something unique and special and different. I also changed up epic attributes. That's something we hadn't really talked about, but in this system, you have your attributes, strength, dexterity, and stamina for physical, intelligence, wits, and perception for mental, and charisma, manipulation, and appearance for social. Each of those also has an epic attribute attached to it. And those epic attributes, A, are a way to make your character feel supernatural, greater than human, but also to allow your character to get automatic successes when they roll using that attribute. So if I have 2 points in epic strength, I get 2 automatic successes when I do a strength roll. And that means that I'm not going to fail. That means that, at least my character, who is so strong, he has epic strength, isn't possibly going to fail when using that epic strength. So, but in the original game, 1 epic attribute got you 1 automatic success, 2 epic attribute got you 2 automatic successes, 3 epic attribute got you 4 automatic successes. And it kept going from there. So the higher in your epic you went, the even more and more and more and more automatic successes you got, which was just crazy. A, because of how I changed successes in this system, but also, again, it's so impossible to fail a roll in the original system. It was really, really hurting my ability for a character to just fail at something, much less fail forward. And so I just made it straight. You have 3 dots in your epic strength, you get 3 automatic successes. Moving on. That simple. This is already attributes that are incredibly high. You can't put epic in something that is low. And so it's kind of important that you're then able to do something with it. I have also changed up knacks. So epic attributes, when you have a dot in them, each dot also grants you a knack. Knacks are just supernatural abilities. One of the stamina knacks is the ability to eat literally anything. It doesn't make that thing taste better, but that thing does act as nourishment. So it mentions like dirt. You could literally just eat dirt and subsist on that with no problem whatsoever. One of the epic intelligence knacks is the ability to learn twice as fast as anyone else. So any knowledge-based ability you can gain for half the time and half the experience point expenditure, which is huge. It means that you can become incredibly smart at just about any subject for quite cheap and quite quickly. But I did make all of those knacks require legend to be powered. I think there's kind of this disparity in the knacks where all of them are incredibly powerful, and I think they were trying to balance them by having some require legend and some not. But what it unfortunately did, because of how they chose them, is it made some of the knacks ridiculously powerful and useful because they're always on, and some of the knacks fine at best because you had to spend legend to do it. And as much as legend is one of the primary currencies in this game, it's not never ending, and it always just kind of felt sad in any previous game I'd run when you would run out of legend and really need to use a knack because knacks are cool and the whole point. But yeah, so I not a lot else. I know this sounds like a lot, but really it's all pretty small things. It'll make a lot more sense as we're going through the sessions, as we're going through these campaign diaries. All these changes I'll probably bring up again, and why I did this and what the instances where they come up and where they're so important. So let's get on to the introduction really quick. It's already been, 47 minutes. But so I'm just really going to go over quick the introduction to the campaign. Campaign is in New Orleans in 2005, in July, and all of the characters had to have some reason to be there. Pretty obvious by most of them. Jane's truck broke down here, and that's why she is here, but everybody else obviously has a reason. Orion lives here, Charles lives here and is the bishop, and John is here working on floats for next year's Mardi Gras. So we decided, since we had some time left over in the night before everybody had to go, thank you, Arya. I just said, for what it's worth, all the changes felt pretty seamless. I agree. I luckily know the system pretty much in and out, and I don't think any of the players would have known that I had changed anything, because I know the system so well, and I know the systems that I pulled other pieces from so well. Maybe that's something I'll make a video on later about, making changes to games and why you do them, what you do with them, and ways to do it seamlessly like this. So yeah. Oh yes, and this is one of Jane's usual routes, so she's no stranger to New Orleans. She's here pretty frequently because she frequently drives through here. So it is a wet New Orleans summer afternoon, which any of you who've lived there or been there during the summer, I'm sorry, it's a terrible time to be there, but that's just kind of what it is. It's 98% humidity, and all your characters are on Jackson Square. Well, the bishop's obviously there, his church is there, and the Jane is day drinking, I think, or is just chilling, just taking a walk, taking it in. Even when it's gross outside, it's still a gorgeous area with this great park. Orion just finished his shift and is chilling in the park. And that's what it is. John was day drinking. And had this big old hurricane and everything. So they're all on Jackson Square, and out of nowhere, it just starts raining, which is again, a pretty normal thing, especially in the afternoon in July, where there'll be this afternoon rain. It's terrible. It'll come out of nowhere. It'll go for like 20 minutes, but it is a downpour in the meantime. So all the characters huddle into the church, and the bishop greets them, meets them, recognizes Orion immediately, recognizes Jane from the interaction that they had before and their significant experience. And Mass is about to occur. So it is Wednesday. So, the bishop invites them in to Mass, and the crowd of people coming in out of the ring kind of push them in, even though most of them are not Catholic and not really here for the Mass necessarily. So there you go. They're stuck in it. They, after Mass, get to chatting, kind of realize that they know what the others are. The bishop at this point has been awakened, meaning he has met his divine parent. And when you become divine, when you become a hero, you gain this kind of inherent sense of other divine things. And the bishop is getting this little tweak just in the back of his brain that these people are more than they appear. So they all start chatting, and it is brought up to head out and go to a local bar nearby. Luckily, they remember there is this bar that is actually only open to locals right now. It's technically illegal, but will be legal very, very soon. And so they head off there, and when they're there, they see, pretty much just an empty place. There's a bar, there's some chairs, that's about it. They're still about a month, out from opening. There is one guy asleep at the bar, and there's a friendly bartender, and they all begin chatting. They compare their powers. They talk about, their awakenings and, who they are, what they are, and kind of meet, and have that awkward but good meeting. Suddenly, the man at the bar awakes with a start, and he yells, "It's Wednesday!" Which some of the players immediately kick into and realize who they're talking to, but the characters don't necessarily. And he is just drunk and weepy and all of these things. And I played Odin drunk to a T. It was spectacular. My sister actually looked at me for a second. That's Beth. And actually thought that I might be drunk in that moment. But I've seen a lot of drunks in my time. I know what they act like. Anywho, so he doesn't introduce himself, naturally, just says it's Wednesday, and weeps a little bit about some little small things, and eventually says that he'll see them in 20 days, and it will be Wednesday. And they are all left going, but that's not how time works. And we pretty much cut there as they all head out towards the rest of their lives, and the 20 days intervening until the beginning of the campaign. So, next session is 20 days later. It was July 6th when they first met there. It will be July 26th at the beginning of the campaign. They will meet back up at the bar. They will meet the heads of their pantheons, have some questions answered, kind of be introduced to what kind of the conflict of Scion is. And they're going to hear about the running of the bulls, which if you don't know what that is in New Orleans, you should look it up. It's a great time. It is an actual event. This will obviously be a little bit more mythic, one could say. But that is all that I have. No homework for this week, but I will be back next week to talk about Session 1, and probably then head back to Mutant Year Zero, continue on that path. But I'm so glad to have Arya in the chat. It was great to be able to see you here, and for you to be able to hear about some of the changes and things that I've done. So yeah, same bat time, same bat channel next Wednesday, 7 p.m. We'll chat more about Scion and the first session and how wonderfully it went. But for now,